It's great to be back here. See, that's loud enough, isn't it? I can almost whisper and you could still hear. It's good to be back and, as Tanika said, to be here in real time rather than pre-recorded. I'm sure you're all familiar with Christmas in July. It's largely, I think, an escape to eat wintry comfort food that you do at winter time in the Northern Hemisphere. But today we're going to do it a little bit different. Today I'm going to invite you to celebrate Easter in July, not Christmas in July. But first of all, how many decisions have you already made today? How many will you make today? Some sources are saying that the next slide will be on. That's it, there it is. Some sources are saying that it could be 35,000 decisions in every day. 35,000. Now, if you look at that, by the way, I'm not too sure of the origin of the research and whether it's actually true or not, but I found it online, so if it's online, it must be true. Of course, but it would suggest that there's about 2,000 decisions per hour or one every 2 seconds. That's about waking hours. Some others have suggested that 226.7 of those 35,000 decisions relate to food. Or some of us it might be more, of course. And maybe it is all true. But what about you and your decisions? What's the easiest decision that you have made? What's the biggest decision you have made? What's the toughest decision that you have made? What's the costliest decision you have made? Why don't you take a minute or so and just turn to someone nearby, pick one of those, easiest, biggest, toughest or costliest, and share your experience of your decision that might have been easy, big, tough or costly. Just one with another for just a couple of minutes. All right, you can maybe continue that over morning tea. It seems as though that there's lots of decisions that we've made, well, 35,000 every day it would seem. The title of my comments this morning is A Hidden Lesson from Easter. Decisions, decisions, decisions. We're going to read a relatively long section from the text in just a moment that we'll land in here and there along our way today. But the big take-home for me through Easter, I love Easter, and the particular church we're a part of, we're getting really good at having an Easter experience. So it's not just coming along on Sunday or maybe Friday as well, although in the olden days we would never meet on Good Friday, but having other experiences through the weekend so that it becomes something very, very important. And the biggest take-home for me at Easter this year, and it's continued with me through since then, is the word decision. Decision. The Easter narrative is loaded with decisions and decision making. Because you know the story, I'm sure you know exactly what I mean, but I'm going to put it in context of a text that we'll unpack a little bit. And bear with me. It's Matthew, if you've got your Bibles, Matthew 26 from verse 36, and we're going to go right through to 5006. Or actually 56, but bear with me and just follow the story and see whether you can see some decisions. And then Jesus, this is verse 26 of chapter 20, verse 36 of chapter 26 of Matthew. Then Jesus brought them to an olive grove called Gethsemane, and he said, "Sit here while I go ahead to pray." He took Peter and Zebedee's two sons, James and John, and he began to be filled with anguish and deep distress. He told them, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and watch with me." He went on a little bit further and fell face down on the ground, praying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will, not mine." Then he returned to the disciples and found them asleep. And he said to Peter, "Couldn't you stay awake and watch with me even 1 hour? Keep alert and pray, otherwise temptation will overpower you." For like third day starting the prayer. Oh, sorry. Temptation. Yeah. Sorry, back to the text. Where were we? Sorry, Tanika. "Otherwise temptation will overpower you, for though the spirit is willing enough, the flesh, the body, is weak." Again, he left them and prayed, "My Father, if this cup cannot be taken away until I drink it, your will be done." And he returned to them again and he found them sleeping, for they just couldn't keep their eyes open. So he went back and prayed to pray a third time, saying the same things again. Then he came to the disciples and said, "Still sleeping? Still resting? Look, the time has come. I, the Son of Man, am betrayed into the hands of sinners. Up, let's be going. See, my betrayer is here." And even as he said this, Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived with a mob that was armed with swords and clubs, and they'd been sent out by the leading priests and other leaders of the people. Judas had given them a prearranged signal: "You'll know which one to arrest when I go over and give him the kiss of greeting." So Judas came straight to Jesus. "Greetings, teacher," he exclaimed, and gave him a kiss. Jesus said, "My friend, go ahead and do what you have come for." Then the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. One of the men with Jesus pulled out a sword and slashed off the ear of the high priest's servant. "Put away your sword," Jesus said. "Those who use the sword will be killed by the sword. Don't you realise that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us and he'd send them instantly? But if I did, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now?" And then Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I some dangerous criminal that you have come armed with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day. But this is all happening to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures." And at that point, all the disciples deserted him and fled. Decisions, large or small, always have implications, impacts of one kind or another. As a kid growing up in this church, in the believers' church tradition that Churches of Christ are a part of, where becoming a Christian is based on a confession of faith, a personal choice or decision, rather than a family or a cultural or an institutional or state-linked inheritance, making your decision, quote unquote, as it was for me at the conclusion of a Sunday night gospel service, was an important spiritual formation or discipleship rite. That's R-I-T-E, right. I was probably sitting up on one of the back seats when the church faced the other way. I was sitting in one of the back seats as the kids did, right, with the baptistry up the front. And I remember my fumbling, mumbling steps wandering, as it were, and yet fixed and firmly towards the front on that night when I made my decision. It still has implications on who I am and on who I am becoming. From that night, from that moment, those implications continue. And as I said, the Easter narrative contains a multitude of decisions, large ones and small ones. Each of